Hello, welcome to everyone tuning in. Welcome to this artist-led off-the-record panel all about streaming and hopefully making some money from your music online. My name is Roxanne Bastion. I'm an independent artist and I'm a board director at the Featured Artists Coalition. And I'm very, very fortunate to have an expert panel with me today to discuss this topic. So without further ado, could we please go around, maybe start with you, Prentice, if you could all just quickly introduce yourselves.
Sure. Hi, folks. My name's Prentice. I sing and play guitar in a band called Vistas, who are from Edinburgh in Scotland. So that's me.
Thank you. Maybe Melissa next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Kaley. I'm the frontwoman and band manager for Melissa Kaley and the Smoking Crows.
Wonderful, thank you. And that leaves Eamonn.
Hi there. My name is Eamonn Watt. I am the sole composer of Virtually Conducted Productions, and I create piano music designed for sleeping and studying.
Wonderful, thank you. So this year for many artists has been a real shock to the system with income from live evaporating. It will come back. We don't quite know when, but it will definitely come back. But it's been very interesting to see everyone who wasn't on the top of their game with streaming sort of trying to get to grips with alternative ways, brushing up our knowledge. What else can we do? How can we grow our audience? And how can we get some revenue in from our music? So I'd like to start by just understanding sort of your relationship with streaming and what your what your pro tips are, and then take the conversation to sort of a more general lay of the land, and then hopefully we'll get round to some positive hands-on tips and what we would all like to see from the future. So perhaps starting again with you, Prentice. So your band do really well on Spotify, but your band does really well sort of across the board on all social platforms. You've got great following on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, etc. Could you tell us a little bit about how you went about that? Was it all organic on all those platforms, or did you have to focus specifically on Spotify, for instance, to get the stats up?
Yeah, sure. I think all of it happened quite organically from like the slight initial success that we had with Spotify. We were playing for maybe about a year or so, and just our sort of mates were listening to us and then coming to see our gigs and stuff like that. And then I think it was towards the end of 2017, I think, we got added to our first Spotify playlist. And then that's when we started to see like not only our streams grow on Spotify and stuff like that, but also just the general amount of people who were into the band grow a lot. And it sort of grew outside of just people that we knew and people that we were mates with and stuff. And I think just from there, we've always just tried to build on that through playing live and trying to do as much as we can to like engage with people on like social media and stuff like that as well. But I think a big part of it has been the support that we've had from Spotify and some other streaming services as well, like Apple Music and Deezer and stuff. And then pairing that with like sort of relentlessly touring, I think the two of them go hand in hand quite well. So yeah, that's I think that's been quite crucial to the success that we've had, both Spotify and also touring a lot.
That's so interesting. I'm actually going to skip ahead and just quickly stick with you, because I was going to ask whether those things do interlock. So it's really great to hear from your band's experience that getting on playlists at Spotify and racking up those listeners there, that really did translate as well into people discovering you there and then moving on to buy a ticket to come see you play.
Yeah, I think because we did a lot of, like in the early days and stuff, we did a lot of support tours and a lot of support shows, like just kind of supporting whoever we could really. And because a couple of our tracks were on some sort of like some high profile Spotify playlists and stuff, we would usually play them towards the end of the set. And then when we'd be selling merch after the show, people would come up to us and they'd be like, I had no idea who you guys were, but then you played that last song and I looked at my phone and I realized I've already got it saved because I played it on Spotify. So, and then I think from there, just because people had that connection, then they come back and see us. Like, we have a lot of people who come up to us after gigs, like our own shows and our headline shows. Well, haven't for a while for obvious reasons, but previously we're coming up to us and being like, I saw you guys supporting the Excerpts, or I saw you guys supporting Father Son, or saw you guys supporting Circle Waves or whatever. And it's just because, I don't know, I think because they have that connection of like, oh, I've already listened to these guys and I'm actually seeing them live and I enjoyed it. I'll just come back and see them and take a chance on it. And I think the two of them do pair really well. And it's also good as well, I think, like if you're going to see a band that you've never seen before, or you're watching a support band or something, and you go, oh, that song's quite good. And then it's so quick to just like go on your phone and just type in the band name. And then you can just like hit follow on their Spotify page or whatever, on their Instagram or whatever. And then when you're going home in the car or on the bus or whatever, you can go and actually check out that band in more detail if you want to. So yeah, I think live and Spotify help each other out. Like live and streaming definitely help each other out and are connected in quite a lot of ways, I think.
Great. So that sounds like there's a real and holistic approach there. And yes, I will try my best too, as well, to not just always refer to Spotify. I know it's really tempting, but streaming service, we will get round to talking about all of them. Eamonn, I'm so interested to hear that you specifically design music to fall asleep to. I will definitely be trying that out tonight. Is this, talk us through this, please. Is this something that you've always done, or is this an opportunity you saw when streaming services sort of came to the fore?
Yeah, so I started off as more or less a orchestral / classical composer, and I've actually just been experimental in all sort of different genres, but orchestral and classical music has always been sort of my go-to when composing music. And I sort of took a more analytical approach when finding out how to get on these playlists on Spotify. Mm-hmm. So like, well, first of all, you have to ask the question, how do people find your music? How do they find you? And the answer just didn't click to me at all. And that answer was just playlists on Spotify. So what I did was I sort of analyzed the market. I analyzed the playlists, like Peaceful Piano, of course. Sort of figured out, sort of used my music appreciation skills to figure out, what song uses which sort of musical ideas, and then sort of write them based on what everyone's sort of doing in that list. And basically what I did was I took note of how long each composition was, what tonality it was, and I sort of wrote especially how loud or soft the dynamics of the music were. So what I did was, after listening to many different sort of tunes, many different piano tunes on, say, these playlists, Peaceful Piano, Sleepy Piano, all these different playlists, I sort of then wrote a lullaby that sort of kind of fit around the characteristics of the playlist. That was a song called A Simple Little Lullaby, just literally called A Simple Little Lullaby. And I then used the Spotify for Artists. I already had a verified account with Spotify for Artists, and used their pitching system for unreleased music, where you could pitch an unreleased song that's about to be launched to them, and with hopes that it gets on a playlist. And then as soon as a few days after the launch, I found out that I got an email from Spotify that's saying that I was added to a playlist already. The Magnificent Piano was my first ever editorial playlist. I was like, oh wow, that's incredible. It looks like this sort of technique is working. And then a few days later, it was in Piano in the Background. A few more days later, I got the wonderful message that it ended up in the very playlist I was analyzing, Peaceful Piano. And that then suddenly, the track itself then suddenly shot up in views, like shot up in popularity, and it's just it's been amazing ever since.
Incredible. Well, it was very well analyzed. Fascinating story. Melissa, you've got so many different hats, so please feel free to answer with whichever hat you'd like. But what's your relationship been with streaming services?
I think to be honest, replying to this with the sort of artist hat and band manager hat is probably the best one, just because I know a lot of people in the current climate have tried to, like you say, have been sort of rushing to get things onto streaming sites to make up for the lack of live performance. I mean, with the Smoking Crows, I'm the sole composer for the Smoking Crows as well as the band manager, so it is many hats and it is quite challenging. I think the one thing that was always going to be the most challenging with the Smoking Crows is because the majority of the music in our area, far more commercial, things like indie and rock, and of course the Smoking Crows are very, it's soul music, it's blues music, and you know, we could tour a lot of places and a lot of festivals that really did us a lot of good, but it's not necessarily everyone's first go-to. In sort of Central Belt Scotland, we had to play far more sort of niche stages, niche places, and support niche artists, or at least niche for Central Belt Scotland. Kind of to parrot what the guys are saying, I mean, certainly the live part of the Smoking Crows really helped when it came to our Spotify and all of our streaming services. You know, the power of being at a gig and being able to refer to, you can now get this album, our album Devil's Luck, on all major streaming services. That's, you know, it's a really powerful thing because most people nowadays obviously have Spotify and things like that on their phone. I think when it came to trying to get onto more playlists, being super duper prepared, i.e. obviously, you know, pitching before your release and all that kind of stuff is important for sure. But I think the thing that we found the most powerful was making sure that our social media and the branding of our social media and the sort of the voice that covered our social media was really consistent across the board. Because I think as well, when you're going for any kind of playlist for Spotify, you know, if your social media and the branding of that social media is really scattered and kind of chaotic, it kind of makes a much harder sale. So, you know, when it came to pitching for things like Devil's Luck and some of the singles that we've released, because we'd already set up a really fantastic branded social media presence, which also had interactions from followers, you know, followers asking about when's this going to be released, and interacting with all of the posts and having a scheduled social media presence. I definitely think that helped us quite a fair bit. Certainly some of the playlists that we've been included on have been smaller playlists, but I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. There's still power in that, because of course our music was still reaching people in different places, different countries, that it never would have before. Because as much as the Crows would perform, you know, festivals and tour up and down the country, there's only so many days of the week, there's only so many times you can gig when you've got a 13-piece band. So having, you know, other playlists, whether they're, you know, smaller or not, meant that we were able to get our music out to lots of different people. So yeah, I do think live for sure, and certainly researching into what kind of playlist you want to be included on. But for us, I think social media was a really a sort of a best friend for us when we were going for playlists and what have you.
Yeah. You're all making my job very easy because you've all already started mentioning tips and things that you can do to increase your chances of gaining visibility, of getting on these playlists. So Melissa, you just mentioned the importance of having your branding right, making sure you've got the same press image everywhere so that people recognize you instantly. Eamonn, you've already mentioned Spotify for Artists, which if anyone watching this panel, if you're not on there yet, get on it. Super easy to get on, and it's a very useful tool where you can see all the stats of what your music is doing on Spotify. And as you mentioned, that's how you can pitch. So perhaps starting with Prentice and then nipping round, for someone who hasn't had the benefit of gaining a following from playing live, someone who's possibly just starting out now and really wants to increase their chances of gaining a following online, what are your tips and tricks? What would you recommend?
My tip is always just focus on your band or your musical project and focus on the songs more than anything else, because because I think that once you have that, the other pieces can fall into place a lot more easily. I think one of the reasons that we got on like our first playlist and things like that was because we released a tune that like we were all really happy with it, but people actually really got into it. And again, I'm just talking on a very local level, just people that we knew and then them recommended to other friends. But from what we were told back in the day, and obviously Spotify shifted a little bit now from back in 2017, but what we were told was because there was a lot of folk, a lot of local people and a lot of people in that area just listening to that song, that then put that tune onto someone at Spotify offices in London's radar. And then they listened to it and they were like, oh, I like this. I'll stick this on a couple of playlists and see how it does. So I think if the songs are good and people are into it and people can tell that it comes from a genuine place, that helps everything else fall into place. And obviously those other things that were mentioned are really important as well. Having your press shots sorted out, having your bio sorted out, all that's like dead important. But without the song, you don't really have anywhere else to go. So I think all bands should just kind of focus on picking, like if you've got a bunch of songs, just pick the best one and just focus on that for your single and then put that out, push it as much as you can. You don't need to put loads of money behind it or whatever, but just push it as much as you can. And hopefully it will, if people react to it in the right way, it'll get into the ears of other people as well. That's what we found anyway, when we were starting out. So I always go with that, just sort of focus on the songs first and then fingers crossed everything else will more easily fall into place.
Yeah, sound advice. Thank you. Anybody else?
I would definitely say as well, I think getting your song sorted and making sure that, you know, your craft is right. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. But also as well, I think, you know, I started a record label with a few people off of my master's. And I think the one thing that we found was that a lot of people, when they were just starting out in their careers, or at least they had got the craft stuff down, but then they were looking for, you know, going that step further into, you know, playlists and branding and all that kind of thing. And the one thing that everyone sort of talked about was, you know, this big concept album they wanted to do and all of the wonderful things they wanted to accomplish in their career. I think dialing that back a little bit when you're just starting out and thinking about quality over quantity is a really powerful tool, especially when, you know, you're looking like artists on Spotify like Ash Nico, who literally, you know, every 3 months are releasing one song, or perhaps every 6 months releasing an EP. I'm not saying that we want to play into the hands of this whole you know, create art quickly. I'm not talking about that. But when you're just starting your career and, you know, you're just trying to find your fan base and find your foothold, a smaller EP or a smaller single release, rather than sort of jumping ahead of the game and trying to put out like a 12-track album for things like streaming services, much easier to promote, much easier to create, much easier to just get off the ground, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I just want to pick up something that you mentioned earlier as well about the smaller playlists and how important they can be as well. Because I am as impatient as everybody else. Of course, you always want to reach for like the biggest and the best thing, and it has to be now. But it is the way the algorithms often work. If you reach enough of the smaller playlists, algorithms will kick in and favor your track. So fear not if you don't get new music, whatever day of the week it currently is. shows where I'm at. If you don't get that on your first release. Eamonn, have you got any tips to add? I'm so interested in particularly seeing as you design music for platforms, and what's your advice if anyone would like to follow in your footsteps?
Well, yeah, just like what Prentice said there, just focus on the songs as well. And for building your fan base, I'd say always start off local in your local area. See if you can get your friends and family to have a listen to your tune and see what sort of reaction you get from them, of course. And I also been using sort of I've been also let's see, I've been promoting to promoters who run blogs as well. So I've been using services such as a Submit Hub, where you can sort of promote to you can promote to blogs and playlists blogs and playlisters as well,
Full
and they can.
That's correct.
Yes, and they can give you some feedback. Some of it can be well. I will also say some of it can be a bit picky on some areas, but you also do. But if you do get on a playlist, then that will definitely. If you do get on one of the sort of the user playlists from SubmitHub, then that is already a good start there, I would say. Onto as you mentioned, getting the algorithm to sort of be at your favor there as well. So, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so this panel is called Making Money Out of Your Music. So let's talk a little bit about remuneration, particularly remuneration from streaming. Now, please only feel free to share as much as you're comfortable sharing. What is your attitude? I imagine we're going to get different answers within this from all of you speakers. How do you see revenue from streaming? Is it an important income stream for you, or is it more of a marketing tool to feed into a bigger picture? Prentice, would you? So I'm always going to start. Always starting with you.
No, that sounds, yeah, that's fine. For us, I think streams have been very helpful in terms of like helping to finance stuff that our band wants to do. We initially released all of our stuff through a website called EmuBands, because we had like no idea how it actually worked, and it was just one of our friends who's in another band just said, because we initially thought that you had to be like properly signed and everything to even have a song on iTunes or whatever. But then, yeah, one of our mates just recommended that. So we just went through that, and we always found that was a good service because it's very, what's the right word? Like, I don't want to say cheap, but it's like not very expensive to get a good amount of music online. And like Melissa was saying, if you're focusing on just popping out singles and stuff like that, it is like, that's a good service for small bands starting out. And all of the money that gets collected from your song getting streamed gets collected by EmuBands and then fed back to you, the artist, which is great. And they don't take a cut, or at least they didn't take a cut when we used it, which was great because then that meant that even just getting added to some small playlists and getting, you know, a couple like maybe like 10,000 streams on a track or whatever, it does feed back into your band and it allows you to fund things that you want to do, like even if it's just paying for fuel or paying for van hire or something like that. It's nice to just have that little bit of extra cash to come back in, and it is a tricky one because then when you start to get signed and stuff like that, or if you decide that that's the route you want to go down instead of being independent from that point onwards, it can be tricky because then the money from streams is getting fed back into a label and stuff like that, and I don't know. It's a double-edged sword, the whole streaming and revenue thing. And if you can make it work as an independent artist, I think that's like a really, really amazing thing that so many artists are doing now. And playlisting and things like that really, really does lend itself to independent artists having a like financially viable career through their music. So yeah, that's always been our relationship with it. We do feel broadly positive about how streaming works and then the revenue that comes from it.
Okay, very well put. Thank you for that. Melissa, what about you?
Yeah, just what Princess was saying, we used EmuBands to begin with. We found it really user-friendly. They've got a Glasgow-based office. In case, you know, anything goes wrong, you can get in contact with them. I think for us, certainly the money that we've got from streams, I mean, it's not going to add another acre to the land, and that is the truth. But then again, when you're an independent artist, absolutely everything that you do helps. And, you know, even for getting the stats back from EmuBands to know exactly where people are listening to your music, which feeds back into all the information about your, you know, demographic and where you should be advertising yourself, and you know, who's listening when and that kind of thing. I think it's kind of finding a distribution as a smaller artist is quite a tricky beast. But when it comes to sort of remuneration and sort of trying to monetize your independent act, I do think synchronization's definitely the way forward for sure over streaming. But then you've got really great websites like Songtrader who are trying to be a one-stop shop for all of that. I've definitely had a look at them. They're not particularly user-friendly website. It's quite clunky. However, you're getting the chance to stream. They collect for you for your streaming, and you're also put in as well. You're given briefs for synchronization opportunities that are going around. So, yeah, I think until you get to a certain part of your career, streaming's not going to definitely be able to pay for everything. Like Prentice said, it's going to be things like, even if it's putting fuel in a van to take the band somewhere, that's enough. But yeah, I think more of these platforms that are trying to incorporate more, so that when you are going to look at, you know, what you're going to be making that month from things, it's going to be streaming, synchronization, streaming from YouTube, streaming from all over the place, all added into one place, which then I think you would start to see that it's a profitable thing to be having on the go.
So just for anyone tuning in who might not know, with synchronization, you mean having your music be put to film or TV or adverts?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've just been given the 5-minute warning, and I have so much to ask you guys. But before I move on, I am interested, Eamonn, to hear your answer to this, seeing as I imagine it might be a slightly different one.
Well, this is a really tricky question. I mean, of course, we're not going to deny it here. Streaming royalties are extremely low. They're around a third of a cent, essentially. But the way I see it is to not sleep on it.
Nice pun.
I'd say it's yeah yeah. But yeah, definitely don't be turned off by it. I would say again, just ask yourself, how do people discover my music? How do they discover my music on Spotify? And that's once again through playlists. And I've been, as mentioned before, I've been using services like SubmitHub, which again submits to blogs, and playlists that will eventually get your algorithmic views. That should that it builds up your initial audience and gives you your, which hopefully in return gives you your algorithmic views. And and another way I should also mention is you also have your royalty collection societies as well, to definitely not sleep on those as well. As with every stream you get from Spotify, you also it's also collected by your performance royalty organization. The mechanical rights and the performance rights are also gathered by this organization. So again, if you can also sign up to PRS for music and then sort of get those extra royalties that way as well.
Yes, everybody should absolutely be signed up to PRS and PPL.
That's right.
And if you're an independent artist, you need to sign up to PPL twice, once as a musician and as a rights holder. I know that took me a long time to figure out. Right, before we run out of time, quickly, let's get on to other ways we can monetize our music online and grow our fan base. Bandcamp, selling physical merch on social media. Perhaps, yeah, very quickly, Prentice again, and then Melissa, what are your tips on those things?
Sure, I think a big help for a lot of bands, regardless of what your size is selling your merchandise and selling t-shirts and selling vinyls and stuff. And to go back to a thing Melissa said about your sort of social media brand being consistent and good, I think you should try and make your merch and your vinyls as good as it possibly can be, because I think people will appreciate that. And you shouldn't just flog stuff just to get a bit of cash, but I think that can be really helpful for all artists. So yeah, merchandise and making it as good as it can be. That's a big thing for a lot of bands, I think.
Thank you. Melissa, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, Snap. I think you should look at merchandise as an investment for your band, and the better the quality of your t-shirts and your CDs and your vinyl, the more that it will last consistently. So if you don't have a release for a while, or perhaps you've got some stock left over, if it's really good quality, it won't matter. If it's perhaps from a previous release, people will always want it if it's good quality.
Great. Thank you. I think we're going to have to wrap it up, but if I were to very briefly summarize all your wonderful wisdom nuggets, don't forget to work on your music. The song is the most important thing. Try and figure out who is your audience and where are they. be analytical and perhaps have a little bit of a thick skin if you're going to be submitting to Submit Hub, and if you're going to pitch to Spotify, and register with PRS and PPL, get all those boring bits right so that you can not miss out and continue to make music throughout this tough year, and things will definitely be better next year. Everyone tuning in, if you could have a decentralized applause for our panel. Thank you so much to you all for your advice and for your time, and thank you very much for tuning in.